On the left side, we will see that we use the aggregate function to return the whole result for the dim reseller table. We select count star as the number resellers column from the dim reseller table, and we will see the result set with the number resellers of 701. On the right side, we introduce into the group by. Group by the business type, and in the select class, we select the business type out as well, and then count star still as the name resellers from the dim reseller table. So in this result set, you will see that the result is divided by the group, the business type, and the number resellers are grouped based on the business type as well. If you're interested in it, you can sum up all those three numbers of the number resellers, then the total should be 701 as well. The group by is not limited to one field. So again, on the left side, this is the example from last slide with just one field in the group by. And on the right side, we introduced into two different columns in the group by. The second column is bank name. And you have to see that when we introduce into one more column, we have to select this column out in the select class as well. After the bank name in the select class, that is our aggregate function to calculate the count. So in this result set, you can see the result is based on two different columns, business type and bank name. Besides that, the group by can include into multiple aggregate functions. So previously, we just have the count star as the number resellers. Currently, we introduce a new aggregate functions or aggregate calculations. The main of the year opened as the oldest year. And you will see in the result set, we have two different columns of the aggregate calculations and two columns based on the group by columns. There are a couple of restrictions. Firstly, if choosing to include expressions that reference columns but do not include an aggregate function, you must list all columns used in the group by class. So here is the example. If you want to group by for those two different columns, but those two different columns are not in the aggregate functions or aggregate calculations, you have to list them out in the select class. The second restriction is most common mistake is to attempt to group on the expressions you create in the select class rather than on the individual columns. You cannot use an expression created in the select class. So this is the logical order of operations we mentioned several times. We can see that the group by and having go before the select phase. So we cannot use the columns that created by the select class. We can only use the column from the original table and group by the original columns using the having class based on the original column. This is the syntax for group by. If you want to group by on the field 1 and field 2, you have to select them out in the select class. And after that, you can introduce your aggregate calculation. Again, we can have more than one aggregate calculations. Now we know how to create groups or subtotals, and we know how to filter on the result sets using the where class. But how do we filter on those groups? Now we're going to introduce the having clause. The having syntax gonna be like that. Select from and group by should be the same. After that, you have a having clause that based on the aggregate calculation. So here's an example. This is the SQL statement with select from and group by. And then you can see the result set kind of like that. We have the number resellers with 33, 34, 34, and 33 again. And then the oldest year. However, currently I want to have introduce a having clause that is having count larger than 33. That means after the group by, I want the number, the num resellers or the count star larger than 33 gonna be selected out. If the count star is not larger than 33, I do not want them to show up in the result sets. In that way, the result set gonna just show the 34 values of the number resellers column without those 33 values show up. Okay, so two filters, the having clause. The having clause acts on the rows after they have grouped by. And the where clause acts on the rows before they have been grouped. And this is the syntax with the where, group by, and having. Again, the where gonna act on the original field, and the having gonna act on the aggregate calculation after the group by. There are several different types of predicates. And the predicates could work on the where clause as well as the having clause. Like comparisons, the range, use between, set membership, use in or not in, pattern match, use like or not like, known or is known, and plus two additional, qualified like any, some, or all, or exists. So in this learning segment, we covered the purpose of group by clause. We covered how to use the group by clause to return columns that are not in a result set of an aggregate calculation. The purpose of having clause, and how to use the having clause to filter the result of an aggregate calculation. The difference between where and having. That's it.